All right, folks, we are fortunate to have one of the top rated shows right here on Pod TV, a show that I am always glad to be involved with. And we have an amazing host who does all kinds of great things on the network. And he is definitely one of the pride and joys right here on Pod TV. So we're always glad to have this amazing conversation with Peter Bennett, who has been doing a lot of great work. He has definitely been involved in a number of spaces and has definitely been a person that you would have a great deal of respect for because of the kind of work he's been doing and all along those lines. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Peter's got on his mind and all along those lines because he has been doing some great work. And I am a big fan of Peter Bennett and think that he is a truly amazing individual who has always got great things taking place, and I am always glad to be involved with his space and to see what he's got going on, as he is definitely one that we need to be listening to on a regular basis. So definitely looking forward to this conversation. So if you want to know why you're wanting to watch The Hackers, it's got some of the most interesting stories that you won't get elsewhere. And you've also got that dividend pick of the week, and you can catch a new episode starting live every Thursday at 1 p.m. So Peter Bennett is got a BA in economics from UCLA, a law degree from the University of Miami Law School, and an MBA in finance from NYU. And he's worked on Wall Street and in finance for 17 years. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Peter Bennett's got to tell us about these very important issues at this very important time. So I don't know if you know this, Peter, but I've always been a big fan of yours, always interested in what you've got to say. We don't always agree politically, but that's all right. You don't have to have your friends agree with you all the time either, and all along those lines. So consider you a friend from up there in the Northeast, and I'm going to turn it over to you and find out what interesting things you've got to say to our public.
Thanks, Mark. I always appreciate the introduction. You always do a great job. And you're right, we don't agree on all things politically, but there are certain common sense things we agree on. And, I do have some friends I disagree with politically, and can still get along, but that gets into the world being divided by the media. And, that'll be a subject we'll cover a little bit today, too. So welcome to Wall Street Hackers, November 14th, 2024 audience. You can catch a new episode most weeks, starting on Thursdays at 1 or Saturdays, depending on your distribution channel. So first, our markets report. The markets and economy dodged an absolute bullet by not electing the first socialist and extremely or highly progressive president, not to mention one that almost certainly couldn't have even implemented socialist policy in an effective way. If you want a little footnote on that, more evidence, Kamala Harris's campaign spent $1 billion, didn't get elected, and the thing is, they're now $20 million in debt and pleading for money because they've overspent their budget. Oops. And we do have budget issues, as we'll discuss on the show, as always, for the government. Anyway, but in terms of the markets, dodging a bullet is not the same as fixing an economy with very serious potential issues, to say the least. Yes, President Trump will implement and likely have a high number of well thought out economic and positive policies. To me, there's no doubt about that. His tax cuts, which desperately needed to be extended, we've discussed that on the show, the effective tax increases and decreases in terms of not only hurting the economy, but actually creating the reverse effect on the government, is pretty well established throughout history. Another discussion. Massive useless waste will be eliminated. Everybody's known about the waste forever, and Musk is probably one person to do it. I hope he doesn't cut valuable, activities, but I'm sure most of it will be just useless waste, and it needs a lot of waste cutting. There will be new incentives for U.S. manufacturers, and we'll see how the tariffs work, but tariffs are not sales tax as advertised by those against Trump. They are ways to create a fairer trade system, or they're just bargaining tools where Trump can now go to other countries and say, get rid of your unfair rules, or we'll put ours in. So, and they're powerful political tools too, by the way. So at first, you think all this should begin a golden age, as some investors who are very positive on what's going on, of prosperity say. The stock market seemed to think so last week, when the market went up the most, indicated by the S&P 500 and the Dow, it had gone up in a year. My tie is weird today, I have to admit. Okay, there, a little better. Anyway, so the market went up a lot, but this week it's been flat, by the way, but that's not the point. And I say, unfortunately, not so point. No, not so fast. President Trump and Congress are going to face great challenges. And I mean great challenges, not good, great, bad, great, and great in size, from both the actions and the inactions of the last presidency, and also decades of many poorly thought out strategic government policies under multiple presidents. There's a lot to undo and a lot to do in this term, and there will be headwinds. There are three main reasons why I have concerns and why everybody should be concerned. One, inflation is moderated, but it's still high, higher than it should be, and it's very unclear whether it's going to continue to moderate. October consumer price index actually rose 2.6%, which was an increase from September's 2.4. Not bad, but going the wrong direction. Shelter prices rose 0.4%. That's 4.8% annualized. That's not very good. And the point that I would bring out is a large part of the recent drops in CPI and other measures of inflation are due to the drop in energy prices. But energy prices are very volatile. Energy actually dropped. Energy prices dropped 4.4% year over year in the as of the recent report, and gasoline dropped 12.4%. So that's great if it continued, but there's absolutely no guarantee that will continue. Again, one, because of the volatility, and that gets into reason two. Energy prices fluctuate based on supply and demand, obviously, and energy projects, large energy price projects, take 5 to 7 years to come to fruition. So the activities and inactivities during the Biden administration severely hampered both exploration and development in the energy sector. Now, if it takes 5 to 7 years for new projects to come on, that might create serious lags and shortfalls in the next coming years, and it's going to take time to offset the damage that was done. And as a footnote, Biden also emptied a good part of the strategic energy reserve that needs to be refilled with oil, and limited pipelines, which those can maybe be reopened sooner, but a lot of damage was done. And now we get into reason three, which is the biggest elephant in the China shop, and it is phenomenally huge. And this is the real challenge for both the United States and the Trump administration and the world. Because the world is in similar situation as the United States, as I so frequently point out, and the media rarely ever points out. There is $125 trillion in estimated U.S. debt when counting unfunded liabilities on a GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles basis. That's a really solid estimate. It comes from David Walker, by the way, who was the controller of the currency under 3 presidents. So the reason is because the government is not counting the Medicare and Social Security promises that they made, and I think they're going to have to keep most or all of, and hopefully all of. So we're also talking about compounding interest on the already accounted for debt of $35 trillion, which is expanding, and as interest rates on debt tend to do, compounding. So here's a quote of the week, and it comes from Google AI. According to recent data, around 61% of the federal government's budget is considered fixed spending, or, quote, mandatory spending, meaning it is predetermined by law and does not require annual congressional approval, with the majority of this amount going towards programs like Social Security and Medicare. So the deficits and the interest on the deficits are likely to continue to grow, and there's only going to be limited flexibility. It's going to be a real battle to start to even control this growth, and it's going to very potentially absorb more and more of the current federal budget and future federal budgets, and it's a gigantic challenge. I mean, I talk about frequently that $125 trillion in debt is more money than the entire U.S. stock market, bond market, and privately held real estate in the U.S. And again, the world is in very similar situations. I've looked at countries around the world. So it isn't a very pretty economic situation that's being handed over, and there's going to be great challenges. What to do? The Wall Street hackers theory of where this comes out is, of course, and we've said it before, hopefully you watch it frequently. One, yield curve control is going to be a very necessary tool to bring rates down, and the government is going to be using it in the future. It's been used by the United States in World War II, Japan, and Australia more recently. That will create likely very low rates, extremely low rates, zero rates, or even slightly negative rates. The lower the rates, the better in terms of monetizing inflation. Monetizing deficits and debt. Now, my theory is they're likely to succeed in bringing down rates for a number of reasons, all of which I won't get into. But the other thing is, if, knock on wood, they fail, which again I think is unlikely, then welcome to Zimbabwe. Outrageous inflation. Because if they can't control this, it's just compounding astronomically. I hope and pray not. So the second to do is the economy and stocks are still going to be a decent place to be, as well as I think bonds, which interestingly today hit 4.6%, which I'm surprised. Maybe that's a sign they don't believe inflation is under control too, because it actually went up. But long-term bonds, are always a good ballast for a portfolio, or a good investment. Probably in the worst case, you lose principal. If you hold them to maturity, at least they have some guarantees. But the point is, there's going to be two forces interacting with the economy and stocks. One is it's going to be a definite headwind in terms of inflation that's too high, and it's going to be a tailwind in terms of the lowering of rates. So it's a real seesaw battle between those two. So the stock market and bond market, in terms of the safer sectors, probably will do well and could outperform bonds easily, but who knows? So the third thing is, based on the above, and of course the historical financial statistics that are so convincing that we talk about in terms of performance of dividend stocks, dividend growth stocks, you want to be in where history has shown you always want to be in, pretty much. Dividend payers and dividend growers, much preferable over regular stocks, and selected REITs and MLPs, and energy has done very well historically on average. So these are the places to be no matter what. You want to be in also defensive sectors and defensive stocks with high cash flows and with strong balance sheets. And believe me, these are hard to find. It takes me a lot of work. Sometimes, I've struggled to drop some of the ones that I had, and, I'm always struggling to find the next one and the next one. But hopefully I'll keep finding more, enough to keep the show going for a long time. Anyway, 4 most interesting stories of the week. Interesting story number 1. France tabulates their election results the same night. As of yesterday, we're still deciding for a number of results in the House, and it's kind of undetermined, but some people say the Senate is finalized with PA race, Pennsylvania. Others say, no, we're still waiting. We think it's resolved, but we're not sure. So the only thing that should be really clear is that, and most people would agree with this, is that if there are issues with tabulating mail-in ballots over a week or more after an election, and it could definitely affect confidence in the election, no matter who you want to win. Interesting story number 2. AI can do a lot, but it won't automate your career. OpenAI's ChatGPT has the ability to whip up a resume or cover letter in less than 5 minutes based on the information you feed it. And apparently a lot of people are doing this. But beware, according to a recruiter and many recruiters, but this one says easily 25% of the apps appear to be AI generators. And she says that a recruiter can spot an AI written application from a mile away. And with recruiters being able to spot the artificial intelligence, it may make them think you're not up for the job. Another recruiter had a similar attitude. saying the biggest red flag that a candidate has used AI for their application is when it reads like a formulated template that's been copy and pasted and has a robotic tone. I almost always see words like adept, tech savvy, and cutting edge repeated, especially on the resumes of tech roles. So be very cautious if you're ever creating a resume. I wouldn't use a whole lot of AI. Practical information. Number 3, interesting story number 3. The 47-year-old NASA Voyager 1 fell back on a radio transmitter it hadn't used since 1981 to ping home base after a technical issue caused a day-long communication stall. It's the furthest it's ever been away from the Earth. The Voyager has been floating further away since its historic launch in 1977. This thing launched in 1977 and it's still going. And along with its twin craft, the Voyager 2, they are the only 2 spacecraft to operate in interstellar space. That's where they got the name of the movie. The region between stars. The 2 probes explored Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, as well as 48 of their moons, while carrying messages to Earth on a phonographic record should they encounter any forms of life in distant space. Let's hope they don't. If they can hear that photograph, that's another issue. So now, having strayed 15.4 billion miles away from the Earth, the 47-year-old original Voyager is likely coming to a close in terms of operation, but it isn't going down without a fight. It's amazing what happens with technology. Interesting story number 4, an indirect political story, but one that's certainly interesting. So some liberal women are withholding sex from men and shaving their heads to protest President Donald Trump's landslide victory. The demonstration was inspired by South Korea's 4B movement against gender-based violence, where some women in that country have vowed to follow the 4 no's: no sex with men, no dating men, no marrying men, and no children. Many women definitely are posting about their refusal to engage with men romantically and sexually over the next 4 years. So 2 points. Number 1, men, you may not want to ask a bald sorry, let me try that again. So men, you may not want to ask a bald woman out on a date. Number 2, the strategy probably isn't that sound from an evolutionary perspective. So back to more serious business than that last one. Income pick of the week. Disclaimers: Wall Street Hackers is for entertainment only. There are no guarantees on our investments or on any investments, except for maybe the principal, if you hold a bond to maturity, and the interest rates if it's a very safe bond. These are only our opinions, and consult your financial advisor. So this week we return to the energy utility sector, and we like that sector a lot because of the safety, and also because, as expected, we're pretty sure that there's going to be future increases in power consumption due to chips and data centers. We pointed out that chips require as much estimated power to create as they use in their estimated 10-year life. So there's a lot of power that's going to be needed, and that helps these utilities grow their bases, their income basis, when they get approvals for new projects to build energy. So this week, L&T, Alliant Energy, where we have a 3/4 of equity allocation, that's 3/4 of the equity portfolio, and a smaller portfolio allocation overall. Alliant Energy is a utility that focuses on providing energy and gas services to customers in the Midwest, especially in Wisconsin and Iowa. See me? What I like about Alliant is it's located in a northern climate that is less likely to be threatened by solar energy expansion. I always want northern utilities. Canada, northern, that solar just doesn't work as well obviously in cloudy or colder environments, and that is a threat to the utilities business in general. It has a decent 3.2% yield. According to E-Trade, it has a 7.8 price over cash flow ratio, which converts to a 12.8% cash flow yield, giving it plenty of cash flow for various purposes. The debt to asset ratio is a reasonable 0.47. I'm not thrilled with something I do always want in a stock, which is a very high dividend growth rate. It's been pretty gradual. But if I look at the whole picture, the stock price itself roughly doubled in 10 years. And from about 33 to 60, almost 60 now. And using the rule of 72, the financial formula, that makes creates about a 7% appreciation in the stock price. So if you take the 7% in the stock price, you have the 3% plus in the dividend. I'll take a 10% pretty safe investment, or a 10% investment anytime for some allocations. And that's why I like some allocation to that. Not too much, but it's part of this spread out utility sectors allocation. Okay, we're moving along and not terrible on time. We're always tight. And I realize why, by the way. We cover in 1.5 hour show politics, finance, and the markets, investments, and 4 interesting stories of the week on pretty much every show. That's all live to cover in half an hour. So let's get to it. Panel question of the week. Will the left mainstream media change their direction? And we can bring Mark Lee in this week. Come on in, Mark, when you're ready.
I'm coming on in, and apparently Nick has joined us as well and everything, so he just popped in from Spain.
Well, we can only have Nick. We may not have time. I always say we need one moderator. We'll see who has time. Okay, it's going to be short turns. Okay, background. Recently, the Washington Post established a policy of not endorsing presidential candidates, and they may have been implying in some of their comments that they would be more neutral or less aggressive in their reporting. Now, 2 footnotes on that: they lost 250,000 subscribers about the day they did it, but also there may have been business reasons why, because of Jeff Bezos' business interests, because he's the owner of the Post and a lot of other significant businesses and business interests, I should say, because I don't know if it's one of many, but also it could also be a return to traditional journalistic ethics, which I could hope. Those were the ethics that were in place for decades in the journalism industry until, and the precise moment, which is very interesting, was in 2016, the New York Times wrote an editorial about the need to change their style in light of their opinion on Donald Trump. The New York Times shift, and it was very clear after that editorial, opened the door for many other media outlets to change their philosophy on reporting and basically become more educational, quote, educational, and get away from the approach that they need, totally unbiased news reporting. Since then, the industry is rife with almost countless examples of heavy and so outrageous, so many times, bias. I'll just give you a few. And you would think people who watch these news outlets or listen to them would know it. Calling Hunter's laptop a Russian conspiracy for 2 years when there was plenty of evidence it wasn't. Calling Trump a Russian surrogate or spy for many years. Recently calling Trump Hitler, Stalin, a fascist, saying he will lock up his enemies, or repeating the statements of politicians saying the same thing without even questioning it. Really? I mean, that may have lost them the election, by the way, the Democrats, because people might say, wait a minute, these people aren't telling the truth. Donna Brazile, a supposed journalist, gave Hillary the questions to a presidential debate before the debate. How unethical can you get? In the second Trump debate, 2 CNN correspondents, and one of them admitted it, said they spent weeks in rehearsal preparing to trip Trump up. Not both parties, just Trump. How can we do that? And the producers participated. No journalistic ethics there. Issues you would think somebody again would notice. Finally, the methods of the press are obvious. They bury or very often don't totally report very significant issues if it doesn't go along with their narrative. They very frequently, and this is so obvious if you look at the sentences or paragraphs, they cut words out of sentences and paragraphs and totally reverse the meanings. I mean, what kind of ethics is that? And they have occasionally, but significantly, taken jokes and made them into reports about that they were serious statements. No, Trump really didn't mean it when people should drink bleach. It's a perfect example, and they've done this many times. You would think people would catch on. Anyway, so
to be fair and everything, Peter, because I am the one that is the journalist background and probably one of the few journalist backgrounds here on TV and everything. And there are a number of people that are not journalists by training. You mentioned Donna Brazile. I believe Donna Brazile has always been a political consultant, has been a known political consultant for years. And I don't even think that she claims to be a journalist in the traditional sense of journalism and all along those lines. And sometimes the conversations are also created by couple of problematic things. One, there is a very right-wing infrastructure in talk radio and in Fox News and all along those lines. And there's also this notion of the candidates themselves sometimes saying things that they may not mean because they are doing it for laughs, doing it for hyperbole, and sometimes people take them more seriously, even though they may not be meaning it, like this whole notion of deporting 1 million or catching the enemy from within and other things that are phrases that are parts of the quotes, but sometimes politicians will say things to target their political audience and to try to go to their base, and that's both on the left and the right. So as one with a journalism background, I will tell you that there are a number of people, including some that now have jobs in the administration, that are literally on the Fox side and don't have the background of what they are going to work for, like the defense secretary.
Okay, Mark, I'm going to have to jump in, but so let me answer that, and maybe we'll get Nick in, but usually we need two, as I said, it's just time. So first of all, Donna Brazile was a newscaster on news, and she continues to appear on news. I mean, if I ran a news program, I might say this is not somebody I would want appearing anymore. But she's come back on some shows and whatever. And in terms of Fox News, well, first of all, there's different Fox stations, and a lot of people are liberal, and I am liberal to a point you might be surprised at. But on many issues, it depends. I'm all over the place. But the Fox News. There's 2 points. One, there was Fox Night and Fox Day, and Fox Business, and Fox Business Day and Fox Business Night. They're night and day, literally and figuratively. So the Fox News shows call themselves Fox News, Fox Business News, and then there's night shows where it might say Laura Ingraham or Hannity or whatever. Those don't have news in the frame room, and they sometimes express the fact that they're opinion shows. The other thing is, I have never actually seen the same kind of practices, or rarely seen the same kind of misreporting. I don't see a lot of them cutting out sentences, editing videos, as was recently done to put Kamala's answer in place of another answer when she asked a question by ABC. I've never seen that actually at that level, certainly. So let me get my conclusions, and we'll see if we can squeeze Nick in. As quickly as I can, biased reporting is likely good for ratings because you draw people who like that team, and that's true of both sides. That'll give you. So if you're Fox, if you're saying things people like, they want to hear things that support their team, that say their team is right, their team is, correct, and the other team is and much better than the other team. But there's degrees of how you do that. The second thing is, and this is very important. So I think there's a journalistic effect that's really hurting the Democratic Party. And I said this before the last election. And here it is. The press, and some of them are not experts in their field for sure on the issues, because they're reporters. They create narratives that they like that then are absorbed by politicians. Because let's say you're a typical politician, or a typical person, you might only watch conservative or liberal news if that's what you favorite. So those narratives get created, then they spread the narratives, and then the press reports it. So it's this vicious cycle, and I'm just about out of time. But that cycle, the only way to break that cycle is if the journalistic industry becomes more ethical, and they decide we just can't do this anymore, or politicians start challenging and saying, wait, we're not just going to accept what they say. They're not the experts, and maybe they're sending us into terrible or wrong positions. So, unfortunately, we are out of time.
That's all right.
Great show. Thanks for coming on board, Mark,
Right.
and trying Nick.
Folks.
We will see you next time, as Kim always
See you next
says.
time. All right. Well,
Get
yeah.
healthy and get wealthy. See you soon. Bye-bye.
All
Be on
right.
next week.
Bye-bye.
You popped in for